Hey everybody, welcome back to Design Cinema. This is Feng Zhu speaking, and we are going to continue with our sketching Final Fantasy things while answering questions. So actually for me, it's just the next day. So you guys watching is probably a few days later or a week later. But for me, it's actually yesterday I just recorded the part 1 of this episode. So I'm back trying to do part 2. Hopefully get this recorded so next week I could continue this since my schedule is really busy. So what I've done here is loaded up the image I had yesterday or previously, and let's open up our reference as well, which is this one here, because I am going to start applying line drawing to clean up the lines for all this. So therefore I need to put the references, which I never did from the previous episode. I was supposed to put a bunch of refs here as we start designing the details. But yesterday when I was waiting for the recording software to compile the stuff I was recording, I was just sketching on top. So this part I didn't record because the software itself was compiling, but I did a really quick sketch. You can see here in about 5 minutes or so, a sketch just showing what I could do with this design to make the silhouette a little bit different from one another. So this is the only part I cheated a little bit because I couldn't record it due to the software being rendering. It was rendering out to my designers. But anyways, what I did here is I added some cockpits, which I might keep. It's kind of cool. That adds a little bit of my own flavor to this design while keeping the original still intact. And I put back the very sharp, somewhat raptor feet that you see on these original designs. And I think by keeping that silhouette, the little bat wings, hold on a second, let me do another color here. You can probably also tell that it's very cold in my office today, so I'm wearing a big sweater. But anyway, so we have this and this, and the tip of the mouth here. I think these points retains the original design from the 1995 version of Final Fantasy VI, while we added some parts to make it our own as well. So there's a additional design factor put into the rebooting if we're to do that for reals on this project. And this one, I actually got this twin claw from a different mech that exists in Final Fantasy VI. For those who play the game, I forgot what the name was this one's called, but it shows up pretty early in the game. It's a bigger version of the mech that these guys are on. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to maybe mimic that design using a little bit of the language from this original Japanese design here. So anyways, let's try to clean this up. So what I'll do is let's clean up our layers. So first, let's save a new version. We'll V3 this. I don't need everybody into being layer groups. Let's get rid of the old stuff. This one sucks, so let's disappears. What the heck is in this group anyways? Okay, there's nothing there. That's the grid, so let's get rid of that. That's the line drawing. So this is the stuff I had on top. That's a nothing layer. Okay, so let's see. This is the line drawing, so we push that to the top. Get rid of the group. The grid I'll keep as well. I'll put the grid on the bottom here. So this group is now empty. So again, recording this in real time. So thank you guys for putting up with some of this stuff here. This is all like layer management type stuff, which is pretty time consuming. Normally I would have edited all this out, but since we're doing all this in real time now, we'll keep it all in there. And today we'll also try to get to our questions for sure. Oh, look at this guy. I sketched this little dude as well, but I didn't like where he was going, so I took him out. This is all during the, after I record, what happens is I have about a 10-minute window or 20-minute window where I can't really do anything with the recording software, so I generally just sketch around. So I sketched another one trying to find the angle, but I thought this one was too military as well, so let's ditch that dude. What's this guy here? That's the body. Let's keep that. Here's the grid. Put that over here. Okay, boom. So let's merge these guys here. Let me just make sure I'm correct here. Nope, almost got that wrong. That's actually the grid. The line drawing is this guy. Okay, so these guys are the drawings, right? Correct. Okay, boom, that's the line. And this is the grid, correct? Okay. All right, so that's good. That gives us, so let's put the grid on multiply so it doesn't show up that well. Actually, before I do that, let me undo that. Let's prod these guys back to normal before we collapse them. So now I'm gonna collapse them here, put them on multiply, and then put them back to 8% or so opacity. Let's put it to 8. Okay, so this way we can always bring it back to full opacity like this if we needed to do that. Okay, hopefully my jack is not making too much noise on the mic here. Okay, so that's the line. All right, so that's saved as V3. Now let's crop everybody so we don't need to keep all this white space around. Right. I like to keep my layers pretty simple. I want to just make sure everything's in good working state in terms of my canvas before I start cleaning up, just to make it a little bit easier on the whole workflow. So all right, so that's that. Now I do want to open up this canvas a little bit. Let's see, my background should be that color. So I'm gonna extend my canvas out just a little bit widthwise. Let's give it 1,000 pixels. And what I want to do here is move my images over a bit. So let's move this guy over. Okay, that means my grid has to move with it. Whoops. Grid here. Okay, I don't have to be super accurate here because I just need this part of the grid, so I'll move it over to about, just about here. That should do it. Okay, the other two guys, I'll move them around a little bit as well. I'm just doing this to give myself some space, so when I draw, okay, just a little bit there. So when I draw, I have enough space, just in case I want to do things like have an antenna stick out or something. I have enough space for that to draw it. Okay, so that's good. So all three are spaced out. Now I could start working on this. Let me check the resolution. So right now it's at 33% zoom. I am going to zoom into 100, and that should be enough for now. What's the resolution here? I'm at 9,000. That makes each one about 3,000, right? Average, a little bit under 3,000 if I average this out. So that should be enough space, about 2,000. Okay, let's save that. All right, so now we could start sketching details, and so let's get some of the references going. Let's merge all these two guys over here. Oh, we still have his stuff open over here, so let's go and get some refs. So I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna go over here and start grabbing just some inspirational things. Grab all these over here. What the? Open. Copy and paste that. All right, I don't need too many things, just some stuff to remind me of what the details level should be. Let's see, boom, boom, boom. That's the mechanical part of it. Oh man, I hope my jack is not making too much scratching noises as I record. I might have to take it off, maybe it's gonna make the recording all scratchy. Okay, let's see here. So let's grab some other stuff here. Ooh, this is nice. So I don't keep my references all like super nicely on the plate. I don't need to spend time doing that because it's all for myself anyways. So I just throw my references onto a blank piece of canvas like this. So it's really, really fast to work with, you know, versus I put it all nicely on a page. Okay. Now if I'm gonna show that to clients, obviously we want to make that nicer, but in this case, we don't need to show that to anyone. So we just keep it nice and fast and simple to manipulate. Okay, I needed some steampunky things, which are, what did I use last time? My typewriters. Which is way down. I'm running at 4K, so the fonts are so tiny. Let's see here. Where are we? Typewriter. Now I know in Photoshop, the new version, you can make the UI bigger, but then it's like too big. It only has option for, I think, 100%, 200%, and auto. Auto, I think, just puts it right at 100%, which makes it tiny like this. When you put on 200%, then it's like too big. So it'd be nice if it was like a 125 or something, like 125%. It's talking about the UI size, basically, for those who are using the newest version of Photoshop. I'm now on some kind of Photoshop Cloud, whatever it is that you pay monthly fee for. But this version lets you scale the UI for 4K display, but it's just too big. So I'm back down to a 100%. All right, what are cool gadgets? Bjork video, some diving things. Let's see. That is not really what I'm looking for here. Oh, we have engines, right? Okay, we had this Merlin engine as one of our references. So let's put that over here. Boink. And let's grab another one. I don't need too many right now because I'm doing the first pass of the detailing. And I'll see how far we can get doing that today. Oh, I've got to track time. I always forget about that. Okay, let's just say that 5-10 minutes have passed. Okay. And today I definitely want to get to some of the Q&A stuff as well. But you can probably tell I'm doing this a little bit faster than yesterday because I have to go to set in a few hours. So I'm trying to get this done, not mess it up, so we don't have to repeat the process too many times. Okay, that guy's pretty cool. Okay, and the last thing we're missing is some dinosaur reptilian type references, which I'll get from my reptiles, from my animals. Let's grab a dude over here. Let's see. let's grab this what do you call this, iguana. It's pretty much these things combined is this guy over here, right? Okay, I think that's good enough for now. Boink. Okay, so let's keep these here. Let's take a quick look just to embed these ideas into our head real quick. Put the visual library into our mind. There's some nice details going on over here with this little spiky things here. It's pretty cool. Okay. This is also quite nice. Okay. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just storing all this into my head real quick. So when I start sketching details, I'm seeing some of the lines, some of the forms, because there's no way you can memorize the entire world. There are millions and probably billions of things that are interesting to look at. So having references next to you helps you keep that memory fresh. So I generally always work with references open. Okay, this helmet is really freaking cool. Okay, some keyboards. So I'm looking at details and so forth, just storing some temporary things into my mind. So when I start sketching, I get some of these details. Okay. All right, we're pretty good. All right, time to sketch. So a couple ways to go about this. One is to just draw directly over it. For example, new layer. I take this down and then I trace my own drawing, right? But for the sake of time, I generally nowadays, I just draw directly on top of my own drawing. So it makes it a little bit faster. It keeps the generation, the line art, the same generation as the one you started. So it's kind of my own preference. Now I'm gonna change the color to a little bit of an off red. Ow. I just pressed the wrong key and Windows made a giant noise. Hopefully it doesn't get recorded. Okay, no reason for the red thing. It's just kind of cool looking. I like to work in this slightly. So it's not super dark in terms of the value. It's kind of like a 70, 80% gray if you convert to black and white. So I think just a little bit less harsh than having a solid black value, which could be very contrasty to the canvas. So it's the same reason why my background is not solid bright 255, right? So if you do that, it's super bright, hurts the eyes a little bit. So you can always adjust this later. So right now I just doing mostly this to ease the your vision. So all right, I'll start sketching and then let me save this and then we'll start doing some Q&A as we get into it. Which one should we start with? Start with this guy over here. All right, so I'll zoom out to about, let's see, about 50%, I think. This is 50%. No, 60%, good enough. So what I want to do actually is I want to make it 50% and just as big, I think. So that means I have to scale these guys up just a tiny bit more because I've got some left and right space available to me. Okay. That's pretty good. So that's 50%. I know the font is really small for you to see, but it's just 50% viewport and it's eating up about the full screen of my canvas here. So that's pretty good for me to work at. And I could always go in 100% to get the super fine details. So when I'm doing the first pass line drawing, I typically don't zoom in that far. Now I have to decide which pen to use. Use my line drawing pen, which is this guy over here, or stick with this kind of chalky pen. I kind of want to stick to the chalk one just to see what happens. Okay, so now I think as I start sketching, I'm gonna start, this is gonna be a little awkward because I got all three a little bit off center. When I flip the canvas, I gotta keep going left and right. It's okay. I added this gun yesterday. Again, I was just sketching randomly. I was like, what does it look like with a gun? I'm not even 100% sure I wanna keep that there yet, but we'll see. Just gotta have fun with this stuff yet. So I'm doing a first pass cleanup, which you know what we'll do? We'll keep one of these alive. Okay, I'll keep the original one here. I'll call it OG. So we'll keep it so later you can see that even though we'll keep doing a pretty rough cleanup, by the time we're done, it's gonna be a lot cleaner than the previous one. So even though it might be perceived as still pretty rough, and I'm doing that to show you that when you're doing a cleanup phase, you don't actually have to clean up everything at one time. You could keep it in phases. So for example, now this version is still a little rougher, but it is cleaner than the previous one, and then you do it again and again, and it gets cleaner and cleaner. And it also depends on how you want to finish this product. For example, I most likely is gonna put textures on this and paint it up slightly, I think, I'm not sure. So if that's the case, I might not even need a super tight line drawing. I just need enough information for me to do those details with. So we'll see as we go here. Giant crow's feet. So you can see I'm still being pretty loose with this stuff, right? So all this is on purpose, is to reduce the stress level. Where's my original? What is that? Go away, okay. Because drawing, doing designs and stuff, it's somewhat stressful. Even though I've been doing this for years and years and years, it still requires concentration, requires a certain level of discipline. You know, you can't just like, yeah, whatever, and then just do a nice piece of drawing out of it. So if you get lucky, maybe, but I still need to concentrate. So concentration means a certain level of stress that you're placing on your body as well as your mind. So by cleaning things up in different phases, it allows me to kind of de-stress that pressure, or what should I call it? Release the low pressure, or make it a little bit less. Let me see how to make it a detail here real quick. Basically, make that mental block go away. Because when you have something that's super tight, you have to go on the first pass. It adds a lot of pressure to your drawing ability. You're like, oh, I gotta draw this super nice right away, you know, and that can add stress. Okay. And I kind of want to keep it a little bit sketchy because the original designs of these were done almost in a pencil drawing format. It looks quite nice. I'm gonna switch over to this pen for a little bit as well. This is my drawing pen. Maybe not. I'll switch it back to this pen. This is actually not my drawing pen. This is my whatchamacallit, my painting pen. Okay. Let me try to make all the values the same first. Let me bring this down to black and white. Let me make it a little bit darker so everything's the same. And then I'll bring this back to the original. So now I don't get that crazy red that shows up randomly. Just even everybody out a bit. That's a little bit too bright. Okay, that's good. Just a little bit of a red in there. Okay, 100%, good. Let's start. I'm gonna try to record this without actually pausing the recording software at all or making it into different snippets. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully it doesn't crash. The last one went pretty well. Okay. So this, again, you guys are gonna watch this in real time, so it's gonna take a while. Cleaning up a line drawing like this will take a few hours to do. So this might extend to at least 2 or 3 episodes, I think, for us to clean these up. Now, again, I'm not cleaning these up to perfection. I'm just gonna clean it up enough for us to move on to the next stage with these. I'm not sure what we're gonna do with this series yet. Like, do we draw the airship and some of the characters, and I don't know. So for now, let's just start with this mech. Let's see how far we get. Having the perspective lines is super helpful. Adding some of these parts. These will all be really nice details once we start getting into the texture phase of it. Okay, a few more line drawings, and then I'll start doing some of the Q&A stuff, which we should be doing because the title says Q&A and we're actually not answering any questions. Okay. The only problem with this brush that I'm seeing is that you have to press really hard for the pen pressure to pick up because it's a painting brush, so it doesn't pick up high opacity well. I'm at 100%, right? Okay, I'm 100%. I'm gonna have to go to this brush for some of that. Okay, I'm switching over to my line drawing brush. Little cockpit. A little bit of my own flavor there with the cockpit. I like these kind of bubbly things with almost like a Soviet era type of joint systems, like really big frames. A little bit older. Okay, let's go over to the questions so we could just start sketching and talking about things. All right, so I'm actually going to read off some questions that's on my left here on my now downgraded laptop or demoted laptop. It's only serving as a second display now. Okay, so let's get to questions. So let's see. Is there some reason you don't use opacity setting on a layer instead of trying to erase the right amount. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but generally I don't mess with layers too much at all. I'm really old school when it comes to Photoshop. Some of you guys might have noticed I don't use any new features that's in Photoshop as well. I've stated this reason many times because nowadays my job really isn't about doing this anymore. So I don't need to stay that current with being a good, hands-on artist, doing paintings and line drawings, because my job doesn't require that. I've done that in the past. My career now is in a different state. So knowing the latest Photoshop techniques and stuff doesn't benefit my job anymore. My job is now, meetings and doing all sorts of stuff on production. And that does interest me. It's not like I don't enjoy my job. I love what I'm doing right now. And so my career is taking me to a point where I don't need to know the latest and greatest Photoshop tricks and different ways to paint and stuff. So I don't need to learn it. So I don't rely on too much stuff anymore. And whatever works in the old times in Photoshop, I'm still using it. My technique hasn't changed in the last 20 years. It's pretty much whatever I did when I first got into the industry is what I'm using now. It works. If it works, it works, right? So obviously moving to 3D and stuff is very important, but I myself don't do that anymore. So I have designers who are active in the design industry doing that, because that's what designers are doing when you work on a project. My role is not a designer anymore. My role is a producer. So, okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, okay, hey Fang, would it be possible to speak a little bit about how to approach design studios when searching for a position? Is it better to apply for openings through specific company websites, attend recruitment events and conventions? Is there a specific network of concept artists looking for gigs? Thanks a bunch. All the above, that will be it. So if you're looking for a job, you have to be very, very proactive. Throwing up your images on a website is you could try to do that, but you have to be really lucky that somebody actually finds it. So obviously having good work helps, because people will share on social media and do all sorts of things that social media does. So, but it also means that you have to be pretty proactive in terms of going out there and looking for the work. So going to things like GDC, networking at certain events like maybe PAX and so forth, bumping into the right person. All these things are things you have to be doing as especially when you're looking for work. Once you're in the business, it gets a lot easier. And by that, it's like once you have your first job, you ship 1 or 2 products, this stuff gets a lot easier because the product themselves will help you find jobs. Like you don't have to go out there really to look for work if you did good stuff with your previous studios. So yeah, be active. Go to being forums and so forth. But try not to spend too much time doing that either. Spend your time in the right places, which is perfecting your skills. So, don't be hanging around in forums all day and chatting and so forth. Do that once in a while. Check Facebook once in a while. But if you're spending an proportionate time doing more stuff on social media than actually being in Photoshop and working, then you are probably going about this wrong. So it should be about 95% Photoshop and 5% doing social things and networking and so forth. So, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you know or what kind of network you have, but if the work that you have is not good, it doesn't matter. Nobody can help you. So this is one of those jobs where unfortunately skills does come into play for most of the time, unless you have really good relationships with the company, or your parents own it, or your friends hiring you. Most of the case, you need your skills to get into these companies. So you have to work at it. Okay, next question. Let's see. Okay, what's more important in getting hired? Having experience in working with a team, like a student project, or having a alright looking portfolio? In this case, I'll say portfolio comes first. Your interview will determine if they like you or not. So having team stuff in your portfolio is not necessarily 100% necessary, in my opinion. So it's more about your portfolio, because some designers can work fine without being in a team. So of course, having team stuff is a bonus to have, but is not a factor, I think, in my opinion, in terms of even designers I work with. If you could work by yourself and you don't want to work in a team, but your designs are beautiful, they solve the client's problems, well then that's fine. So it's not a requirement. But of course, every studio is different, so you have to check their website. Some studios might be, for example, I can imagine a place like Disney might be wanting to be want you to have a lot of team experience because they never work by themselves in a studio that big. You're always working with a huge amount of people, big teams and so forth. So they might want you to have that kind of experience. So that you're gonna have to check with the various studios. Okay, let's see. Next question. I wonder how much faster 2D is compared to 3D. So I have mentioned, this is part of the question, I mentioned that 2D is faster than 3D, but what's the margin, right? What is the benefit? Well, until I think things like AI takes over, which I have no idea if it will ever in terms of design, because it's not worth companies' money to invest money into what we do. You know what I'm saying? Like Google is not putting money into like, let's make our AI do concept design. I think that's really far from their goals. I think they're trying to solve things like self-driving, catching criminals and whatever with the AI software, then using that to do concept design. So in the meantime, concept 2D design, getting an idea down on paper in 2D is still much, much faster than doing it in 3D, especially for quick ideas. Right? You can't beat that. And even today, even though I mentioned 3D is used a lot, in the early parts of design, everything is still in 2D. So you can't really beat that kind of speed. Okay, let's move on to another one for a little bit, right? I do this a lot when I draw, so I move from one to another. Trying to find a nice brush here. Going back and forth between my pen brush and this one. What's our time? Should be pretty good. Okay, good. Only like 20 minutes in, I think. All right, next question. Let's see. Do you ever have pain working with the Intuos? I think I mentioned this before. You have to be really careful when working with the Wacom tablet. I think in terms of your posture, in terms of the chair you use, especially this is your career. You're doing this as a hobby, not that big of a deal because you're not going to be spending 8-9 hours in front of your computer, right? But if you're doing this as a career and want this to be a long-lasting career, then invest in a pretty good chair, invest in a pretty good screen. So all those things are already good, and then don't hold your Wacom pen too hard. You gotta kind of train yourself to be pretty relaxed when holding this pen. So if you grip it like this, like super gripping, you're gonna develop a lot of pain over here. I hold this pen is like, whatever, kind of like nonchalantly, holding the pen. So that's the way I've been using the Wacom for a long time. Like, just holding like it doesn't, like a pencil or something. It doesn't really matter. So that way you don't put too many pressure on your wrists and your carpal tunnel area, which tend to develop when you're holding the pen too hard. You can also try to adjust the sensitivity level on the Wacom pen setting if you want. So I never messed with that before, but I'm pretty sure it could change it. So all I gotta do is press a little bit on the tablet and it picks up your pen. So, but I don't mess with that myself, but I'm pretty sure you could do that as well. But yeah, you gotta watch your health in this business. It's you're already not doing enough sleep when doing this kind of work, and two, you could put your body in a lot of physical stress as well. So okay, I know it looks messy as we clean, but this is the way it works. Okay, especially this drawing, because I'm gonna paint it later. I am doing a different kind of line drawing cleanup than, for example, in previous episodes you might have seen some really clean line drawings where we go in and just really start to detail. So this is a little bit different because I'm seeing an end result that is half painted, okay, with textures and so forth. Okay, next question. Okay, let's move on. Let's see. If you want to break into the entertainment industry, should you expect to move often? Is it possible to stay working in a particular area? Well, that depends on the job, I guess. My advice to our students is always, for your first jobs, you should probably consider moving if the job is worth for your resume. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you have a job at a really good studio, they offer you a good job, but they're in a different city or a different country actually, that will benefit you way more than, for example, you have a job offer in your hometown, but the studio might be pretty small, or maybe they don't even have, their product are not AAA, right? You have a big project, big studio, they could add a lot to your resume, but yet they're in a different country, but they'll still help you in your long run in your career versus a home studio. If it's, it's not that beneficial career-wise, but it's beneficial for a living, I would rather take the studio benefit because that's going to be a long-lasting effect So I moved for my first job. I lived in LA all my life, and my first job was in Austin, Texas. So I'd never been to Texas before. So they flew me out there. I was like, whoa, this is so different from Los Angeles. In terms of the culture, the way the city looks. It's not Hollywood, right? It's very different, but it's a good studio. I loved Wing Commander when I was young, so I was like, okay, it's worth it. And it was great. It was fun. And it also makes you grow up, in my opinion, faster. I was, 19, 18 at the time. So being on my own, a different city, you are forced to mature, I guess would be the best word. So, pay your own bills and so forth. When you're in your hometown, you're so familiar with everything. Obviously it's comfortable, but I think living away somewhere is kind of fun. So once you start building a name for yourself and stuff, you can start maybe not moving as much. But this industry as a whole, though, you got to expect to move because of there's so many studios in all over the world. But there are certain cities that are a little bit safe. For example, Los Angeles, there's so many studios out there that you could pretty much stay there in your entire career because if you're good. But as a student, that's not an option that's always available, because they're not the best. Students or junior designers are not someone with 10 years experience, so you can't just walk into Blizzard Entertainment or something and expect them to hire you. So you're going to have to move around a little bit until you get into Pixar, Disney, and so forth. Okay, next question. This is mostly a Q&A, so whatever's on screen, hopefully that's keeping you entertained, but the answer question is the most important. Okay. What do you think about the industry in the UK, especially Scotland? I'm not too familiar with Scotland itself, but UK, there are definitely some studios over there. I know Electronic Arts is out there with Criterion and so forth. There are a couple of good UK developers. There's also some really good film companies out there like Pinewood, which does all the James Bond. They recently did the Star Wars sets as well. So they also employ concept artists. They've been to our school before to recruit. So they also have studios around the world. I think London is their base. They also have, for example, I think Malaysia, Vancouver, Australia, so forth. Pretty much all your major hubs have their divisions. And on top of that, lots of game studios. Now, on top of my head, I can't think of a lot, but there are quite a bit of AAAs in the UK. I believe Rockstar is out there too. I forgot what game they make out there, but I think GTA, part of GTA is made out there, I think. So Red Dead is done in San Diego, I believe. So, but any case, UK should be a pretty big place to find jobs. But Scotland, that I'm not too sure. So, but this goes to the previous question: is you have to move sometimes for your career. So it'll be so much easier if you don't, right? So hold on a second, I'm doing some random details here. Let me clean up. This was supposed to be a little door here. I don't know if you can see that. So I love those old World War II bombers, like the Dantes and stuff. They have these little hatches. I just love those things. Like they can literally try to fit, because a plane mostly is pretty empty inside because you don't want a lot of weight inside airplanes. So during World War II, like the bellies and stuff, they're actually just pretty empty. Not too much stuff in it, just wood frames, some aluminum things, some wires in there. They're just empty frames. So what they did is that sometimes they will outfit those with little cabins to sit some navigator or some, some, I don't know, surveillance things. And just, they design it almost like it's an after fact or something, where this little door is stuck onto the side of a panel. And I love the way they look. So I kind of put that here as well. Okay, what is this, little hand or something I was trying to do? Okay. We drew these really quick. Remember that? Like the last 5 minutes of the last video, we made all these changes. So I'm trying to figure out what the heck these are. Okay, now we're trying to make these more fantasy, more armor-based. I should probably do a little bit more of that. Okay, I'm also warming up now as well. Like literally, my office is super cold. So when I started drawing this, I was a little bit, my muscle hasn't warmed up yet. Now that the muscle's starting to warm up, I'm starting to get into the groove of, for example, the armor designs and how to do the details. Stuff will all come to me. So try not to make excuses, but part of it really is true. I haven't drawn in a long time. But I love what I do now. It's just different. It's a different part of my career. I'm much older than most of you guys, I think, out there. I'm guessing most of our audience are in the early 20s to mid 30s is, I guess, is my audience on YouTube. I'm just taking a guess, but that's what I think. So I'm much older than most of you guys. I've been doing this for a long time. And for me, the career of concept design, I've done that enough, 20 plus years now. So I'm now doing something else, still in the industry, but not drawing. And do I miss it? Actually, tell you the truth, not really. In terms of doing paintings and so forth, because it's tiring. After you do this for 20 years, it's opening up Photoshop and doing painting stuff is pretty exhausting. So not to say that what I do now is not exhausting, but having to sit there in 8 hours to do a painting is like, oh man, I've done that already, 20 years worth of it. So, but if you're starting out, you're gonna have to do that for a long time. Okay, let's see, what am I doing? Questions. Okay, next. Sorry if I'm leaning off the camera. I can't see my own camera, so I have no idea what's going on here. Let's see. All right, this person basically, let me summarize what is asking is, I mentioned many times that there's only few jobs out there, but schools, even FCD itself, we train hundreds of students. So there are not enough jobs for the students that are trained, and that is 100% true. However, you got to look at it from an educational point of view as well. Not all 100 students will be very good. No school has that kind of track record, because a lot of people want to do this, but even if they try, unless you try, you don't know that you can actually succeed at this, right? Just because you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever career you want to do, it doesn't necessarily mean you can actually succeed at it. So what school do is, we don't know that either. We don't know which individual is going to become a badass concept artist. We don't know which individual is going to come in, say they want to be a badass concept artist, and become super lazy at it. You can never tell. The one thing I learned running the school for the last 7 to almost 8 years now is that you cannot judge a book by its cover at all. So it is a very cliche saying, but it is so true when it comes to concept design. Because you look at someone, the way they act or dress or talk or their background, you're like, I don't know, can this be a good concept artist? And then you look at someone else like, oh, that guy looks like a designer, or this girl looks like she's really badass, she could really design, and then it turns out, whoa, they're super lazy and they suck at this kind of stuff. They don't want to put in any kind of hard work. And then maybe someone you visually, from a judging a book cover type of thing, you're like, oh, that person's no way they're going to be good. And then it turned out to be such a badass. So you cannot judge. And as a school, what we do is we offer the education and really have the students in a way find themselves. Are they capable of doing this as a career? So that's why you train, because you can't take in 5 students and then expect all 5 to be badass at it within a year's time. So this is what all schools do, because you cannot control that. We try to do our interviews, we try to narrow it down so the type of students we get in at least has a love for this business. Everybody, I mean 100% of our interviews, the answer is we question them quite a bit in terms of like, are you sure you want to work this hard? Are you sure this is what you want to do? 100% says, yes, I need a place where I could be disciplined. I need a place where I could sit down and really work hard. Yes, I want to put in hundreds of hours to do this. Yes, I'm ready to do this. This is what I want my entire life, right? 100%. But, the first few weeks goes by and you start to see laziness come in. You start to see excuses. You're seeing students who don't do anything, right? Obviously, that's not the biggest percent of the of the students, but you definitely get those. And the other part of this question will be the industry, the top tier jobs are few. For example, you want to work at Blizzard Entertainment on Overwatch. That's pretty hard position to get, I imagine, because they're probably not hiring anyone for it, because whoever they have is good for what they need. So until that person gets, leaves or gets fired or they want to expand the team, that position will never open up. That's a senior position. However, they might have a lot of junior positions open for doing things like drawing shields and drawing swords and those type of things. So those are things where our students generally get into. They go in as junior artists. And then within average, about three years, most of our students make it into senior positions. So they pay their dues at various studios. Some work in mobile, some work in game studios, but they might be an indie studio, right? They might not be a AAA. And then the good ones, the ones that really work hard, tend to get into AAAs after a few years out, right? So, recently I just found out some of our students are going to Montreal, Ubisoft, right? That's a pretty nice studio over there. We have students over at Electronic Arts and all over the world at these AAAs. Witcher, right? Which is CD Projekt, right? These are all where our graduates going, but it's not generally where they go in the first time they graduate. They have to pay their dues, learn how the industry works, gain their experience, and then they get in. So what we do here is just train, provide hopefully a good education. So again, I'm not trying to market our school here. I'm just talking about schools in general. Even the school I went to, Art Center, I was in a class with many students, and in my batch, most are not in the industry anymore. They just, either they don't like what they do or they switch careers. I don't know. I don't know what happened to them, because if they're not in the industry, I don't track them anymore. So I don't know what happened to them either. So that's why in my design cinema, I always mention this is not for everybody. It's such a niche market for what you like. You have to be a diehard, in my opinion at least, a diehard fan of this business to love it. You love films, you love games. Well, when you see making of videos, you just get totally into it. When I was young, I watched behind the scenes things. I mean, because I grew up in Los Angeles, so I happened to see them for real, go into a set and watch it for real, so I could film. This is all pre 9/11, before the world became kind of like dangerous, I guess. Not dangerous, but the security is a lot more harsher than when I was young. But during the early 90s, like 91, 92, you have a backpack and you're like 12 years old. You can walk around to the Paramount set and just say, I'm a kid. Can I watch you guys do stuff? I watched in so many sets. I watched films being shot. I watched like 21 Jump Street, all sorts of random stuff, Jeopardy, Star Trek, because they're all very close to where I live. So I just carry a backpack. My friends and I wander to the security gate and go, wow, what are you guys doing? They're like, we're shooting movies. Oh, can we watch? They're like, yeah, sure, kid, let me take you in. Different attitude, I guess. Nowadays, you try that, they'll like probably pull a gun on you. It's like, what do you want? Yeah. So a very different time frame. So I loved that stuff when I was young. I just totally seen I was more interested in the crew, what they're doing, than say the actor, because most people go behind the scenes like, I want to look at a movie star do their stuff. I didn't pay attention to that at all. I was looking at what the director is doing. I was looking at the crew, the makeup department, the set dressers, running around. I go, man, those guys have such a cool job. They're putting all this stuff together, and that's what got me interested in this business in the first place. So if you have that kind of passion, then I obviously applaud you. So the same reason I'm doing Final Fantasy VI right now, because these are things I grew up with. I absolutely love it. I love it beyond the gaming part of it. I love it for the fact that these are products, entertainment products, that changes your mind. It makes you go somewhere else. That these creators over at Square was able to make a product so convincing that it became part of my life. It became part of my memories. It's almost like I went on a vacation somewhere. Playing Final Fantasy VI did the exact same thing. It puts me in a different place, and I'm fascinated by that ability of this art form to do that to people. And I wanted to do that with working on these products, be part of these teams that are able to transform someone to another place, another world. So if you have that passion where you just love this stuff, then you'll make in this business. And of course, you want to work hard at it. No matter how difficult the road is, you're willing to put it in. And for me, it's hard, but man, it's fun, So even doing this for so many years, when I'm on set and you see the lights get turned on, you see the camera crew putting ABC cameras on, and you're seeing the actors in the uniforms and the suits you design, you see the sets that you design, and all that stuff is coming together, and the director yells action and the stuff comes together. It is such a fun feeling to know that you're part of this process, that within a year or a few months that millions of people would get to enjoy this product. So, all right, babbling. Next question. What am I on time? Okay, we're good. Next question. Let's see. Oh, this is one regarding speed. How many pieces do I have to do a week? How many paintings should I do? How many sketches should I do? Let me just make sure the question is correct. This two-part question is also how rough is a sketch. Let me try to answer the first part, which is regarding how much pieces do you do. This is a hard one to answer, pretty difficult, because it depends on the studio you're at, what the requirements are. So if you, generally in my experience, the bigger the studio, generally the lesser the pressure, because they have the money and they have the manpower. You go to a giant studio like Electronic Arts or Ubisoft, they have a lot of concept artists on the payroll. So imagine you're working on a studio and there's 10 concept artists, right? And say Ubisoft working on the next Creed game, right? So you have 10. Well, even if these guys do only one painting a week, you have 10 paintings at the end of the week, you have 40 by the end of the month. That's a lot of stuff, and pre-production in AAAs could last somewhere between a year to maybe year and a half. So do the math on that. That's a lot of concept designs, So even if you just produce one, you produce quite a bit of work, and the studio has enough designs to keep them going for a long time. So if you slow down a bit, it's not a big deal in a AAA. But if you're working on an indie studio where there's only like 1 or 2 concept designers, well, now you're way behind because you do 1 painting a week between the 2, then you have 2 paintings a week, you have 8 in a month, compared to, say, a big studio, they have 10 within a week. So your production cycle is way behind compared to that. So when you're working in general smaller studios, the workload is a little bit heavier. So you're generally asked to do a little bit more than you're working in a big studio. So, but that's my personal experience. I'm not sure what every studio is like, but generally when you're doing stuff for your big AAAs, their demand for the number of pieces is not as high as when you're working with smaller budget studios. Okay. This next question is, how rough can the drawing be? Well, depends on who you're showing it to. If you're working with art directors, then you could probably get away with rough stuff like you're seeing here. This will still be too rough, the one I have on screen here, to show clients. It's not ready to be shown. But to an AD, to a creative art director, to a even a producer type that's on the project for a long time, they could probably understand what you're trying to do, and it's okay to show. But case by case. Right? You can even do that with directors. Like I worked with certain directors who draw themselves, so they understand roughs, right? So they could see past the scribbly lines. They won't ask questions like, "What is that?" They won't ask that. They know that it represents detail. That detail doesn't matter at this point. The silhouette matters, right? But you're working with someone, for example, who is who is an artist actually, they'll know what this is. Someone who's not, they'll be like, "What is that? I don't get it." So you gotta check your clients. Okay, next question. Any studio in South Africa? That I'm not sure. I'm guessing there must be. At least there are mobile developers, I'm guessing. But this goes back to my previous answer. If you have to look for work and the work is elsewhere, then you have to go there for it. Entertainment in general is a very, I guess, exclusive job. Not exclusive, that's not the word I'm looking for. It's not a company you find in every single country. So if you're living in a country that doesn't support entertainment as a whole, like it's not part of its culture, well, there aren't going to be many jobs available for it. So you're going to have to go to countries in which entertainment is a big part of their economy. For example, Los Angeles, United States, California, right? That's the entire West Coast is pretty much entertainment. So the entire city is built on that. So it's a lot more jobs than, say, you're out in, even in the United States by itself. If you're over in, say, Montana, United States, I'm guessing there aren't too many game studios set up in Montana. So you're going to have to move to California or move to Austin, move to New York, where some of this entertainment stuff exists. So you got to go where the job is. Okay. Let's see. Next question. This person comes from traditional theater, and they're wondering what are some ways to, to learn to break in. I think my answer is always know your fundamentals. Doing concept design is no different than any other high-level trade skill, which is you have to be really good at your basic knowledge, right? You can't be a physicist without knowing math. You cannot be a chemist without knowing your basic periodic tables and so forth, right? It's the same thing here. So you have to know your basics, and you have to know it really well, and not just know it, but how to apply it. So once you know that, then you can actually use 3D, 2D. It doesn't really matter. Don't just do the fun stuff. That's the kind of stuff we see in a lot of interest portfolios at the school. Like you look at their interest portfolio, it's just the easy stuff. Spiky mountains, an alien. I don't know, some post-apocalyptic destroyed world, just the easier stuff, because that stuff doesn't require you to do too much hardcore fundamentals, and that's the most common stuff we see generally in an entrance portfolio by someone who's trying to learn. So you rarely see someone, for example, do a car design that's real, for example. You just never see that, unless they went to a school that trained them on it. You won't see them designing like a BMW, or designing someone like a room in their actual house. So I don't even try to do that when I'm doing design cinema, because it's too hard. The last thing I want to do is give myself a lot of stress when I'm doing these. So, okay, keep track on time. Let's try to answer more questions. Okay, next one. Oh, this is a long one, so I'm trying to find out what's going on. How detailed must your sketch be before you move into 3D? Again, that could depend on who you're working with. If you're working with a really good 3D modeler who knows how to translate your designs into 3D early on, then you probably don't need your designs to be super detailed. But if you're working, say, freelance and this stuff goes to a studio, then you're gonna have to detail this out quite a bit. You might even have to provide some workflows and so forth for them to understand your design. Okay. Hope this stuff is not boring you because line drawings takes a long time. For those who watch my past one, I tend to speed through this stuff. I'll fast forward a little bit. I'm also not as paying attention to this drawing because I'm trying to think of answers to your questions. Okay, let's see. What are my opinions on software that helps you draw to study your line art, like Nezumi? I haven't heard of these kind of things. Use whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Software is just a tool. We mentioned the 3D one before. You can use whatever the heck you want. Nobody cares. Clients don't care. If it helps you be better at this job, then use it. If it hinders you, then don't use it. So it's not about the tool. It's about what you do with it. So if you want to just use pencil and pen, if you do a great job at it, you could pretty much survive this industry as well. So at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about what the clients get, is what these films and games are getting as a return from you. So in any way you could express to make them fulfill that problem, you will do well in this business. So really, clients don't care. So if they just want their solutions. If they are picking on you for I have never heard of a client say, "Oh, you shouldn't use Photoshop, you should use," nobody does that. So we're like, "Oh, use 3D Max versus Blender. Oh, that's not good." Nobody does that. So they don't care because that's not their job. Their job is to figure out what design you're trying to do. Does that meet their spec? Does it meet their budget? Does it solve their design problems? That's the kind of stuff they are focusing on. Okay. Any more questions? Let's see. I'm gonna have to open another document. Actually, let me save this one and while I open the other one just in case it crashes. Okie dokie, I've checked the video, it recorded, did not crash. Okay, so let's finish the rest of these questions and I start sketching the, we'll continue the next episode, continue sketching. Although I'm debating to myself if I should take some of this stuff offline because I think once you see a little bit of it, you've seen the rest of it. But I don't know, we'll see. Because I don't know how to fill content for another 2-3 hours of this. Because to clean each one up, I guess each one will take about an hour and a half. So you do the math on this. This is almost about 5 hours worth, right? Hour and a half. That's 3 hours. Yeah, 4.5 hours. Or if you want to increase a little bit, almost 5 hours of recording. That's 5 episodes of Design Cinema just to clean the line drawing. So I'm doing a little math here, and I don't know if that's necessarily entertaining. That because the next 3-4 episodes will be exactly the same, which will just be me cleaning line drawings. We'll see, because I don't know if that's exactly, because it's not like let's play videos on games because they're moving from one level to another, hopefully within the hour's time, So you're seeing things that are a little bit different. And even if you watch the let's play games, the content gets pretty boring in the middle, that you actually see a lot of people skipping. So I do that as well. I do let's plays, I skip ahead. So if that's the case, what I could do is I could do some of these line drawings a little bit in Photoshop. So I don't know, I'm not sure yet, but we'll see how that goes. It's mostly for you guys, entertainment value wise, because it's a little boring if I just draw line drawings for the next imagine 5 episodes is pretty much the same thing. Okay, anyway, what was I doing? Questions. Okay. It'll be interesting to know how concept artists go about designing comic book movies because all the concept exists. Yes, but that is generally a reimagining of an IP. I believe I did a whole episode on this thing, but I'll kind of briefly summarize it. When designing for IP, and I've been working on things like that as well, right? Where something already exists, but you have to make it into a film. The thing is, for most studios, especially IP-driven studios, like your Star Wars and your Marvel movies and so forth, right? What they're trying to do is they're trying to make the design actually quite different from the original while still maintaining sort of the core concept of the original. So like if you look at the Iron Man suit, for example, right? The design is for the film is very different from the comic book version. They share common themes like colors, the little thing in the middle of his chest, right? But it's not exactly the same design. They're doing that on purpose, actually, oftentimes, because you don't want to do a direct translation. One, sometimes direct translation doesn't sell that well because on the bigger screen at high resolutions, the detail just does not work. Because on a comic book, you're talking about a line drawing. On a film, you cannot zoom in that close and still have that design hold up. So you're going to have to do some redesigns. And two, the reason why they diversify the design is for mass market appeal. Because you could have fans who love the original comic book version. Hopefully, they'll also love the film version. But you could have a case in which you have the film being loved by fans, but they don't necessarily like the comic. So if you make it exactly the same, then you're placing your bet only one time, if that makes sense, right? For example, you follow the design exactly the way it is, then you're only appealing to probably the fans who like the original design in the first place. Those who don't like it might not follow the film either, so you lose the fan altogether. Now, if your design is a little bit different, the overall world's a little bit different, you might pick up twice the fans because the original readers of, like, for example, I didn't read Iron Man comic book at all. I don't actually read any Marvel films at all, comic books, but I do enjoy some of their movies, right? I enjoy like the Galaxy one. What is that? The Guardians of the Galaxy, right? I never read the comic book. I don't know anything about it, but I found the IP to be really interesting. So you're picking up a new fan because it's appealing to they approached it from a global, I guess, perspective versus purely being a 100% accurate adaptation of the comic books. So that's one way to look at it. And the other stuff has to be, it gets pretty complicated. It has to do with IP rights. For example, if you license the Lord of the Rings, the IP, right? You cannot actually use exactly what it is because the copyright holders holds the rights to the book, for example, or like Alan Lee holds the right to his version of Lord of the Rings, right? So it gets pretty complicated, but in general, if it really exists, you still have to, it doesn't mean the design is locked. So it doesn't mean you cannot redesign it. And there's plenty of cases with the Batman suit, for example. There are so many versions of the Batman suit. There's the Christopher Nolan version, there's the Ben Affleck version, right? They're all the same thing, but the design is slightly different. So, and as a designer, that's sort of our job. Okay, next one. How do you organize all your reference images? Nowadays, I used to use a software called ACDC until they totally, in a way, made me pretty angry by the fact that their Mac version is completely broken. So I bought it for like, $50 or something like that. It's not expensive, but it doesn't freaking work on the Mac. So the thumbnail does not show anything. And that's the whole point of ACDC, is to show thumbnails. It does not show anything. It shows little text messages for every JPEG. So it's completely broken. So now I use Bridge, which is a free software from Adobe, this one, right? So if you use Adobe Cloud or whatever service they call it these days, you just download Bridge. It comes free for Photoshop, essentially, and it's great. It works just like ACDC, this one right here. So yeah, it's fine. You reuse images, opens things up. You can move stuff around. You can move it to another folder. So you can change your thumbnail size to be like giant if you want, like this. Yeah, right. Make it huge. You can make your thumbnails really small. So it works exactly the same as ACDC, and it comes with Photoshop. So therefore, you're just using one application. They work really well next to each other. So that's what I use now. Oh, onto my file. There it is. Okay, next question. This person is basically trying to organize all the references on Pinterest, and I think that's the question, right? But the only downside is to view it, you have to go to another website. Well, I don't use Pinterest or Tumblr or anything to organize my files. I keep everything local, so that way I can access it anytime I want. I don't need to have internet. I don't need to log into to Pinterest and so forth. So I know that it's easy to do that on Pinterest, to kind of mark everything and kind of have your online portfolio. And I think that's pretty okay to work, actually. I have zero problems with it. But my personal preference is to just work it locally, store the files on my computer. Okay. Hope you know, good to know what I'm doing now. So I kind of explained that already, what I do these days. Production stuff, producer stuff. Okay. I'll try to explain that more in detail as we go forward. I have some episodes that I'm planning to do that are a little bit more in-depth, but those require me to pre-plan some of these episodes. That's coming up in the next maybe month and a half from now. I plan to do some of those episodes. So those gonna have to do with what I actually do for a job, for a living. And I'll try to cover that because it's still very valid for, I think, concept artists to hear that kind of stuff, even though it is dealing with producer stuff. But I think it's really good to know what the entire pipeline of the production cycle. And I'll get into those eventually. But like I said, those things I cannot do off the bat. I need to prepare reference materials and prepare a bunch of things to make those episodes valid. Okay. What is the pen I'm using? Well, I think he's referring to the Wacom pen. I'm still using Intuos 3. I love the Intuos 3. I have the 4s, I have the 5. I even have the Intuos, what do you call it, the Cintiqs. But I always go back to my Intuos 3. I have a ton of them at home. I'm guessing, I don't know how many, 10 maybe. I got 3 or 4 in my drawers alone, and then a bunch, because Wacom used to give them to me for free whenever I did talks for them and stuff. And I love the 3 because it never breaks. Hopefully I didn't jinx myself, but it never breaks. This tip has worked for me. This one right here, I think I've been using for at least 10 years, and it's still there. And you guys know how much I do a week, in terms of using a Wacom. It hasn't worn down. So whatever the material they use on it is great. It doesn't wear down. I never change the nibs on my Wacoms. And I have enough of them in the studio that none of them gets wore out. So I don't know. I heard the new ones, the 5s and so forth, the nibs wear out super fast. But I've never used the 5, so I'm not sure. Okay. Next question is, instead of using a giant monitor, you use a Cintiq, right? Yeah, sure. If you find it to be useful, you find it to be very easy to use, go ahead. I personally can't get into the Cintiq either. Or is there a reason to switch over and learn it from scratch? For me, a giant monitor is fine because I use my monitor for other things other than just Photoshop. So, writing Word documents, looking at spreadsheets and so forth. So, although recently I've been debating if I should switch over to a super wide screen for my work, because I got a few, what are those? Those Acer X34s for my gaming things. I have a few of those lying around. They're pretty cool for work, I think. I don't know what's going to happen to the Wacom ratio though when you use those, because they're at 21:9 ratio, right? So like our 16:9 screen is like this, over here. Those ultra wide is like something like this. That's your 21:9. This is 16:9 or 16:10, right? So it adds a ton of real estate space. But the Wacom, at least the one I have, is a 16:9 Wacom. So I don't know what happens to that. I guess you could lock to a certain regions of the screen, but I'm debating if I should try to switch over to that. But back to the question, I don't use a Cintiq or anything. Okay. What are some movies and games and comics that influenced me when I was younger to get into this business, I think? Yeah, it's right behind me. You're seeing the basically the 2 films that had a major influence. There's a few other ones, but these are huge ones for me, which is Alien, the first one by Ridley Scott, and then Blade Runner, which is also by Ridley Scott. So these films had a tremendous influence on my childhood. Alien being one of probably the most influential film, as well as Blade Runner. They came around the same time period for me. Alien was really young for me when I saw it. My parents were pretty good. That's a rated R film, but I happened to see it when I was really young. So that scared the crap out of me when I saw it. And then, of course, Blade Runner is 1986, and I saw that right when I was, I think, at the right age for that kind of film. And man, did it have a crazy influence on me. So strange thing is, it's not Star Wars. Even though I love Star Wars, he had a big influence on me. But I think on Star Wars, the influence is more from the toys that he made. I just love I remember playing with the Falcon and what do you call it, that Y-wing thing, the Empire flies around in. So the Delta wing, right? I had all those toys, the X-Wing, of course. I just thought the spaceships were the coolest things ever. So I remember playing with the Star Wars toys more than me, for example, believing that the world was real. So, Darth Vader did scare the crap out of me, but I wasn't thinking like, man, I want to be in the Star Wars world. I don't know what it was, but for Alien and Blade Runner, I thought those places were absolutely real. I thought that, the planets that Alien came from and the spaceship they were on, everything was happening in real life. Keep in mind, this is pre-internet days where you couldn't see behind the scenes. For a young kid to see that early on, I totally bought it. So they had a huge influence. In terms of comic books, I read a lot of European comic books. mostly your heavy metal comic books. I know those have a lot of adult stuff in it, but my parents are pretty open about me looking at all sorts of random stuff. So I read a lot of heavy metal for the Wonky Menace and all these. Mobius, of course, as a big contributor. So I didn't grow up on American comic books too much. I have friends who read the Marvels, the DC comics, but I never really got into it. I don't know what it was. I think I just did not have enough influence around my friends who gave it to me. So I didn't buy them from stores. So I didn't know about it too much actually. So yeah, I never was big on the American comic book stuff. I love the European stuff. Okay. Next, what am I? Lost my track here. This question has to do with my current job, which is like what kind of influence I have working with directors and producers. And I briefly answered that previously, but I'll go to that more deep in the other episodes. But our influence is actually pretty big in terms of us talking about stories and so forth. But we're coming always from a design point of view to advise directors and producers on costing, on how to make something happen, right? So if you have a very expensive VFX shot, okay, how do we make that work? And generally we have VFX supervisors there as well. Right now we're working with a VFX company, working with a really, really, really badass supervisor right now. This guy comes off of so many movies I loved as a kid, and I'm working with him pretty much on a daily basis. And it's so awesome to be working with someone who had such a long, influential role in the films that I grew up loving. He's older than me, so he's worked on the films that was part of my childhood, and it's great. And we just brainstorm on the phone, brainstorming on how this shot could work. I do some concepts behind it. My team actually does some designs, and then he takes that, throws it to his VFX guys, and I see the results of that, and it's pretty awesome. And that's the kind of role we play on these films. But I'll get into that in a later episode. Okay, we're almost done here with the questions. Okay. This one, it was a question that's similar to yesterday. It was like, how do I deal with dry spells and when you're not inspired? Yeah, you get those quite a bit. But one advice was to just work through it. The other is that I try to take on multiple projects. Even as my studio, I have multiple films in production. So sometimes when I get burnt out by one, I work on the other one. So it totally works. When I was working on in LA, freelance, I also took about minimum 3 projects at one time. So if I get bored of like drawing Transformers or something, I'll be like, okay, off to The Sims. It was such a different. I still remember those days. It was such a contrast to work on doing robots, and then in a few minutes, I don't want to draw robots no more. Let's draw some Sims. I was working on Sims 3 at the time. So it's so different, but it kept the creative juices going because your mind was just switching 180, going from drawing, Starscream's head to drawing some neighborhood in Sims in the Sims universe. So it was great. That's sort of how I keep my dry spells going. But you cannot give up on it. I don't stop. I don't do things where like I'm gonna walk away and do nothing. Although on weekends, I mentioned a lot, on weekends I try not to do nothing related to the industry. I try to relax and play games, but that's more of a relaxation thing, not to cure a dry spell. So during the work week, I'm working pretty much the entire time. All right, last question, I think. This person said, I know that you don't go into fundamentals, but can you please share some of the fundamentals? Yes, I could definitely do that. In fact, what I'm doing right now is fundamentals. I'm drawing perspective. You see the grid. The reason why I don't talk about fundamentals much is not because I don't want to share with you guys or like, oh, I'm hogging it for the school or something. No, it's not nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that fundamentals are very, very dry to one, to teach, and two, for you guys to pay attention to. I think I mentioned this before as well. If 1,000 people watch it, you might get maybe 10 people that actually will find it interesting, and maybe one will actually do the homework from it. Because fundamentals is one of those things where if you don't practice it, it's almost useless to watch it. It's just like you watching someone doing, I don't know, maybe how to play piano, right? Doing the keys like dong, 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 dong. You watch all you want. You could watch it 1,000,000 times, but you never touch the keyboard on a piano. You're not going to know how to play piano. So the fundamentals work the exact same way. But once you know how to play the piano and someone shows you how to do a certain symphony, right, how to hit the bars and so forth, you could probably play it after you watch the video. So that's how fundamentals work. So the reason why I haven't done it is for that purpose, is that I want to teach you guys things that you could use, like these videos, hopefully will help somebody. But fundamentals is one of those things where like we could spend a lot of time recording these videos, but the benefits of that is very minimum unless you're committed to doing homework. And that's why schools exist for a lot of it. They exchange your tuition in a way to make you do homework. When things are free, you have no obligations to do it. I have zero obligations to give you homework, and I certainly don't have the time to go check homework. So fundamentals, and you could get some of those, like Scott Robertson has some of those videos on YouTube. Definitely check them out, but they're hard. You have to practice. So unless there's some kind of honor system, like you put $500 in the jar, you know, and if you don't do the homework for that week, you donate that jar to like to a shelter or something, you know. But I doubt that it really works. But that's one way to force yourself to do something, because you have to have a loss. You have to have some kind of risk involved in doing something that you don't want to do, right? Especially things like homework. So schools do that by having peer pressure, by having tuition and so forth. But when it's free, how do you force yourself to do something you don't want to do? Because I don't want to do fundamental homework, you know, when I was in school. Yes, it's something that is important, but I don't want to voluntarily do fundamental homework. It's boring, it's dry, you know, it's super time consuming. The end result looks nothing like sexy at all. It's boxes on a piece of paper. So why do it? So you have to give yourself an incentive. So you know, I'm open to suggestions. You know, I don't mind covering fundamentals, but there's really a very hard way to cover that without, you know, at least giving the information that's useful. Okay. All right. We're almost at the end of the questions. What's our time here? I think we just hit about an hour. So what I'll do is let's turn on the before and after. So you can see, even though this drawing is still pretty loose, if I turn on the previous one, you can see that it has evolved into a much cleaner state, about 30%, I think 30% cleaner. So same with, which one did we work on a little bit? The tip of this one right here, right? So look at this part here versus this is cleaner. This one's the most, I guess, easier one to see, right? Whoop, before, after. So this process, another 3-4 hours on the whole thing, everybody will be cleaned up and we're ready to sketch. So I might take some of that offline. I'll think about it, because again, I'm not trying to get out of the real-time recording. It has to do with entertaining you guys, so the 3 episodes doesn't look exactly the same one for another, and that doesn't add value to anything. So I might take half of this offline, we'll do a little bit of cleanup, and then we'll get into adding values and textures and so forth. So again, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on the next episode. This is Feng Su speaking, and signing off. Bye-bye.